11 Rings, The Soul of Success by Phil Jackson. Picture this. It's 1970. Game 7 of the NBA Finals at Madison Square Garden in New York City. The air is electric, thick with anticipation. The New York Knicks are facing the mighty Los Angeles Lakers, a team absolutely stacked with legends like Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West. But here's the problem. The Knicks captain, their heart and soul, Willis Reed, is badly injured. He's got a torn thigh muscle, and the doctors have practically written him off. The team is trying to warm up, but you can see it in their faces. The spirit is gone. They look defeated before the game even starts. Meanwhile, the Lakers are on the court, confident, running their drills. The crowd is anxious, murmuring, and then something extraordinary happens. A figure emerges from the tunnel, limping, dragging his leg behind him. It's Willis Reed. He's in uniform. He can barely walk, but he's there. The moment he steps onto that court, the entire stadium erupts. The roar is absolutely deafening. The Lakers players literally stop what they're doing, jaws dropping in disbelief. In that single moment of pure courage, the game was over before it ever started. The Knicks, fueled by their leader's spirit, won the championship. A young, lanky player on that Knicks team, a guy named Phil Jackson, watched this unfold. He saw firsthand that victory isn't just about talent or strategy. It's about something deeper: heart, spirit, that mysterious bond that transforms a group of individuals into something unbreakable. This is the central secret behind the man who would become the most successful coach in the history of professional sports. Today, we're exploring his memoir, 11 Rings, The Soul of Success. This book isn't just a collection of basketball stories. It's sold millions of copies worldwide because it's a manual for a radically different kind of leadership. Leadership rooted in mindfulness, compassion, and a deep understanding of human nature. Phil Jackson, known as the Zen Master, won an unprecedented 11 NBA championships, first with Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls and then with Kobe Bryant's Los Angeles Lakers. He managed some of the biggest egos and most difficult personalities in sports history, and here's the kicker: he didn't do it by shouting or being a tyrant. He did it by leading from the inside out. By the end of our journey today, you'll understand the 11 principles that guided Phil Jackson's incredible career. You'll learn how he transformed superstar-led teams into selfless, unified tribes, and how you can apply these same timeless lessons to your own life, whether you're on a court, in a classroom, or just trying to build something meaningful with other people. So where does a journey like Phil Jackson's begin? You might imagine a place of privilege or some highly competitive athletic environment. But for Phil, it began in the stark, windswept plains of Montana and North Dakota, in a home governed by two powerful forces: faith and discipline. Both of his parents were strict Pentecostal ministers, and his childhood was a world away from the life he would later lead. There were no movies, no television, no dances. Life was a series of church services, Bible studies, and devotions. His parents taught him that reveling in your own success was an insult to God. Glory belonged to Him alone. This rigid upbringing created a deep yearning for freedom in young Phil. He found his escape in sports, particularly basketball. The court became his sanctuary, a place where he could finally express himself. But more than that, it was where he first felt the transcendent beauty of a group moving in perfect harmony, a complex dance of moves and countermoves, where everyone had to rely on each other to succeed. His real education in leadership, however, began when he was drafted by the New York Knicks in 1967. There, he came under the guidance of a man who would become his most important mentor, Coach Red Holtzman. Holtzman was a master of simplicity. He wasn't some flashy strategist with a complicated playbook. He had two simple rules that he shouted from the sidelines in every game: see the ball and hit the open man. See the ball was his philosophy for defense. He believed a strong defense was the key to everything and that awareness was its secret. He wanted his players so attuned to the game that they moved together as one, 5 men anticipating and reacting in perfect unison. Hit the open man was his rule for offense. For Holtzman, selflessness was the holy grail of basketball. He insisted that the ball keep moving, creating opportunities for everyone, not just 1 or 2 stars. He used to say, on a good team there are no superstars. There are great players who show they are great players by being able to play with others as a team. This was Jackson's first taste of what he would later call the circle of love. It's not romantic love, but an intense emotional connection, like the bond that warriors feel in the heat of battle. It's a brotherhood where each person is more concerned about their buddies than themselves. Jackson came to believe that without this essential ingredient, love, no amount of talent or strategy matters. After his playing career ended, Jackson embarked on a personal quest, a journey to reconcile the strict dogma of his childhood with his own spiritual yearning. He explored everything from Christian mysticism to Native American rituals, but he found his anchor in Zen Buddhism. Zen gave him a new way of seeing the world. It wasn't about following rigid rules. It was about being present, paying attention, and letting go of control. He learned a profound lesson from the Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki, who taught that the best way to control people, or a cow in a pasture, as the metaphor goes, is to give them a lot of room and encourage them to be themselves. If you fence them in too tightly, they'll only spend their energy trying to break free. These two pillars, Red Holtzman's selfless team basketball and the mindful awareness of Zen, became the foundation for everything Phil Jackson would do as a coach. He developed a set of guiding principles, 11 of them to be exact, that formed the soul of his leadership style. The first principle, and perhaps the most important, is lead from the inside out. Jackson saw that many coaches just copied the latest trends, trying to find some flashy new technique to get an edge. He called this an outside-in strategy, and he knew it was doomed to fail. His approach was the opposite. He discovered that the more he spoke from his own heart, from his own authentic beliefs, even his wacky Zen ideas, the more his players could actually hear him and connect with the message. He wasn't trying to be someone else. He was leading from who he was. The second principle follows from the first. Bench the ego. Jackson learned that the more he tried to exert power directly, the less powerful he became. His approach was to dial back his own ego and distribute power as widely as possible. He fostered an environment where everyone, from the rookie to the superstar, played a leadership role. This didn't mean being a pushover. It meant freeing himself to become the keeper of the team's overall vision, creating a state of harmony and oneness rather than imposing his authority. This led to his third principle: let each player discover his own destiny. Jackson refused to be the coach who thought for his players. When a team ran into trouble on the court, most coaches would immediately call a timeout to give them the answer. Jackson would often let them play, forcing them to find a solution on their own. This built solidarity and what Michael Jordan called the team's collective think power. He didn't want cogs in a machine, he wanted whole people. He pushed players to discover what unique qualities they could bring to the game beyond just shooting and passing. How much courage did they have? How resilient were they? This approach allowed players like Derek Fisher, who didn't have incredible physical gifts, to transform themselves into invaluable champions. But freedom needs a framework, and that is the fourth principle. The road to freedom is a beautiful system. When Jackson became an assistant coach for the Chicago Bulls in 1987, he was introduced to a system that perfectly aligned with his Zen values, the triangle offense. Taught to him by his colleague Tex Winter, the triangle is a fluid, creative system of basketball that empowers every player. Critics called it complicated, but its beauty was in its simplicity. It's not a set of rigid plays to memorize. Instead, it trains players to read the defense and react together in real time. All 5 players must be fully engaged on every play, moving in a coordinated way, or the system fails. When it works, it's like watching jazz. It's virtually unstoppable, because not even the players themselves know exactly what's going to happen next. This idea of infusing the game with deeper meaning led to his 5th principle: turn the mundane into the sacred. Jackson understood that playing professional basketball, despite the glamour, can be a soul-numbing grind. He saw his job as making it meaningful. He borrowed rituals, like one from the football great Vince Lombardi. At the start of training camp, he'd ask his players to stand on a line and, if they were committed to being coached that season, to step across it. It was a simple act, but it created a sacred commitment. The essence of coaching, he believed, is to get players to wholeheartedly agree to be coached, then offer them a sense of their destiny as a team. To help them stay present on that journey, he introduced his 6th principle: one breath equals one mind. Jackson took a lot of heat for bringing mindfulness meditation into the testosterone-fueled world of pro sports. Other coaches joked about his players holding hands in a dark room, but Jackson knew that quieting the mind was a powerful tool for athletes who have to make split-second decisions under immense pressure. He discovered that when he had his players sit in silence, breathing together in sync, it aligned them on a nonverbal level far more effectively than any speech could. One breath, one mind. This led him to his 7th principle, which lies at the heart of his philosophy. The key to success is compassion. In the macho world of locker rooms, compassion is not a word you hear often, but Jackson found that a few kind, thoughtful words could have a transformative effect on even the toughest men. Most players live in a state of constant anxiety, worrying about being injured, cut, traded, or making a mistake that will haunt them for the rest of their lives. Jackson believed it was essential for them to learn to open their hearts and connect with one another in a meaningful way. He tells the story of how Michael Jordan, after returning to the Bulls from his baseball experiment, got into a fight with teammate Steve Kerr at practice. That moment of conflict became an awakening for Michael. He realized he needed to get to know his teammates more intimately, to understand what made them tick. That was the moment he transformed into a truly compassionate leader, and it was that transformation that helped make the team one of the greatest of all time. When a team is connected like that, a certain magic happens. This brings us to the 8th principle: keep your eye on the spirit, not on the scoreboard. Most coaches get tied up in tactics and strategy. Jackson preferred to focus his attention on whether the players were moving together in a spirited way. When a player surrenders his own self-interest for the greater good of the team, his individual gifts manifest more fully. Paradoxically, by focusing less on his own stats, he activates a higher potential for the entire team. When the spirit is right and the players are attuned to one another, the game often unfolds in your favor. Of course, sometimes the spirit needs a little jolt. Jackson's 9th principle is a surprising one. Sometimes you have to pull out the big stick. In Zen monasteries, monitors walk around with a flat wooden stick called a keisaku, or a compassionate stick. They use it to strike sleeping or listless meditators, not as punishment, but to wake them up and bring them back to the present moment. Jackson never used a literal stick, but he had his own methods. He would sometimes make the Bulls practice in complete silence, or even scrimmage with the lights out. He loved to shake things up to prepare his players for the inevitable chaos of a real game. He once told a player he was mentoring to become a coach, "Sometimes, no matter how nice a guy you are, you're going to have to be an asshole. You can't be a coach if you need to be liked." But sometimes the wisest action is no action at all. The 10th principle is, when in doubt, do nothing. Basketball is an action sport, filled with high-energy people who love to do something to solve a problem. But Jackson believed there are times when the best solution is to do absolutely nothing. He learned that focusing on something other than the problem at hand can be the most effective way to solve it. When the mind is allowed to relax, inspiration often follows. As the old baseball player Satchel Paige used to say, "Sometimes I sits and thinks, and sometimes I just sits." This brings us to the final, and perhaps most challenging principle: forget the ring. From a young age, Phil Jackson was so competitive, he would burst into tears if he lost a game to his brothers. He hated losing. And yet, as a coach, he knew that being fixated on winning is counterproductive, especially when it causes you to lose control of your emotions. Obsessing about winning, he says, is a loser's game. The most we can hope for is to create the best possible conditions for success, and then let go of the outcome. He encouraged his players to focus on the journey, not the goal. What matters most is playing the game the right way and having the courage to grow as human beings. When you do that, he believed, the ring takes care of itself. Armed with this philosophy, Jackson took on his greatest challenge, the Chicago Bulls of the late 1980s. This was a team with a singular, blindingly bright star, Michael Jordan. Jordan was a phenomenon, a player so transcendent he could win games almost by himself. The problem was, he couldn't win championships by himself. The Bulls kept getting physically beaten down by their arch-rivals, the bad boy, Detroit Pistons. When Jackson became head coach in 1989, his mission was to transform the Bulls from a Stage 3 team, a collection of lone warriors, driven by the motto, "I'm great and you're not," to a Stage 4 team, where the dedication to "we're great and they're not" overtakes the focus on me. His first and most difficult conversation was with Michael Jordan himself. He essentially had to ask the greatest scorer in the league to score less, to share the spotlight so his teammates could grow. "You can't beat a good defensive team with one man," Jackson told him. "It's gotta be a team effort." Jordan was skeptical. He called the triangle offense, that equal opportunity offense. But he was also desperate to win a championship. He agreed to give it a try. This began a profound transformation. Jordan, who had led with the sheer force of his will, began to learn compassion. He started to connect with his teammates, to trust them. Alongside him, another leader emerged, Scottie Pippen. While Michael was the enforcer, Scottie became the nurturer. He was the one his teammates could talk to, the one who kept an eye out for them on the court. Jackson recognized Pippen's unique talents and created a new position for him, point forward, unleashing a new, more collaborative dynamic for the team. Then came the wild card, Dennis Rodman. After the Bulls' first three-peat and Jordan's brief retirement to play baseball, the team needed a new energy. They found it in one of the most eccentric and controversial players in NBA history. Rodman was a rebounding genius, but he was also a chaotic force, known for his dyed hair, tattoos, and rebellious antics. While other coaches tried to tame him with rigid discipline, Jackson took a different approach, a Zen approach. He accepted Dennis for who he was. He treated him like an adult and held him accountable, but he also gave him space. Rodman, Jackson realized, was the team's heyoka, a Native American term for a trickster or backward-walking man who makes people lighten up when things get too tense. By embracing Rodman's chaos instead of fighting it, Jackson harnessed his incredible energy, and the Bulls went on to win 3 more championships. After conquering the league with the Bulls, Jackson retired, only to be lured back in 1999 by a new, tantalizing challenge, the Los Angeles Lakers. This was a team overflowing with talent, but it was also a team in turmoil, centered around 2 young superstars with clashing personalities: the playful, dominant center, Shaquille O'Neal, and the intensely focused, introverted prodigy Kobe Bryant. The feud between Shaq and Kobe became legendary. Shaq, the larger-than-life Big Moody, wanted to have fun and be the undisputed leader. Kobe, driven by an obsessive desire to surpass Michael Jordan, was all business, and saw Shaq's playfulness as a lack of commitment. The conflict came to a head in the 2001 season, when both stars aired their grievances in the media, with Shaq demanding to be traded and Kobe criticizing Shaq's leadership. Most coaches would have stepped in, laid down the law, and forced a resolution. But Jackson, practicing the art of non-action, did something radical. He did almost nothing. He let the conflict play itself out. He knew that forcing them to make nice would only create more resentment. He understood that sometimes the best way to handle a fire is to let it burn itself out. It was a risky strategy, but it worked. The team, tired of the drama, eventually found its own equilibrium. It was a messy, painful process, but Jackson knew that without that pain, the team would never discover its soul. They went on to win 3 consecutive championships. But dynasties don't last forever. The super team, assembled in 2004 with Karl Malone and Gary Payton, fell apart due to injuries and infighting, culminating in a bitter loss to the Detroit Pistons in the finals. Jackson left, Shaq was traded, and the era was over. A year later, Jackson returned. This time, the challenge was different. He wasn't inheriting a team of superstars. He was rebuilding a team around one: Kobe Bryant. The years that followed were a long, slow process of chopping wood and carrying water, a Zen phrase for staying focused on the task at hand, day in and day out. This was where Kobe Bryant's final transformation took place. After years of being a one-man show of trying to win games all by himself, he finally learned the cold truth of leadership. The humiliating loss to the Boston Celtics in the 2008 finals was a brutal but necessary lesson. It galvanized the team. Kobe, once aloof and demanding, began to connect with his teammates. He became a partner, not just a commander. He started inviting them to dinner, encouraging them when they missed a shot, instead of giving them a death stare. He had finally learned to give in order to get back in return. This culminated in 2 more championships, including a cathartic victory over the Celtics in 2010, Jackson's 11th and final ring. The book ends not with a victory, but with a loss. In 2011, the aging Lakers, going for a 3rd straight title, were swept by the Dallas Mavericks in a stunning collapse. But for Jackson, this final failure was just as much a part of the journey as the 11 victories. The soul of success, he concludes, isn't about an unbroken string of wins. It's about the process. It's about showing up, doing the work, and surrendering to whatever comes. As the Zen saying goes, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The work is the reward. The journey is the destination. When you close the final pages of 11 Rings, you realize you haven't just read a book about basketball, you've read a book about life. Phil Jackson's story is a powerful reminder that the greatest achievements are rarely the result of a single, brilliant mind. They are the product of a collective spirit, of a group of people who learn to trust one another, to sacrifice for one another, and to move together toward a common goal. The most profound lesson, for me, is the idea of leadership as a spiritual practice. In a world that often celebrates the loudest voice in the room, the most dominant personality, Jackson offers a different path. His leadership wasn't about ego or control. It was about awareness and letting go. He shows us that a leader's true job is not to provide all the answers, but to create an environment where the team can find the answers for themselves. He wasn't a puppeteer pulling strings. He was a gardener, tending the soil so that each player could grow into their fullest potential. This is a philosophy that applies far beyond the basketball court. Think about any group you're a part of, a school project, a team, your own family. How often does conflict arise because of ego? Because someone needs to be right or needs to get the credit. Jackson's approach teaches us to bench the ego, to listen more than we speak, and to find strength in harmony rather than dominance. He shows us that true power doesn't come from forcing your will on others, but from inspiring them to join you on a meaningful journey. So, how can you start applying these ideas to your own life today? Here are 3 simple actions you can take. First, practice leading from the inside out. Before you try to lead anyone else, get clear on your own core values. What truly matters to you? What principles will you not compromise on? Spend some time figuring out who you are. The most effective leaders are authentic. They aren't trying to be a copy of someone else. They lead from their own heart. Second, try to find the sacred in the mundane. Whatever task is in front of you today, whether it's homework, a part-time job, or a chore at home, try to do it with your full attention. Bring a sense of mindfulness and purpose to it. Jackson's genius was in transforming the daily grind of basketball practice into something meaningful. You can do the same with your own work. When you approach your tasks with presence and care, you elevate them from mere obligations into acts of self-expression. And third, when in doubt, do nothing. This is perhaps the hardest lesson to learn in our fast-paced world. We're taught to always be doing, fixing, solving. But Jackson teaches us the wisdom of the pause. The next time you face a conflict or a complex problem, resist the urge to react immediately. Take a breath. Sit with the discomfort. Allow the situation to unfold a little before you jump in. You might find that the best solution reveals itself when you stop trying so hard to find it. That was a summary of 11 Rings, The Soul of Success by Phil Jackson. We've explored the core principles and stories that defined his legendary career. But I'll be honest with you, a summary can only take you so far. The real wisdom of this book is found in the quiet moments of reading it, when one of Jackson's Zen parables or a simple story about Michael Jordan resonates with a challenge in your own life. This summary is your map, but reading the book is the journey itself. If any of the ideas we've discussed today about leadership, teamwork, or finding meaning in the daily grind have sparked something in you, I encourage you to pick up a copy. It's more than a sports memoir. It's a guide to a more mindful and fulfilling way of living. A link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to Billionaire's Bookshelf. It helps us continue to bring you these deep dives into the world's most impactful books. Let's keep learning and growing together, one book at a time.